When does it go from general steroid use to steroid abuse? Is there a certain amount you need to take? Is there a certain frequency?
When you take something that either improves your physical appearance or improves how you feel, you very quickly adapt to that being necessary. No one likes going backwards. So you've been training, you're natural, you've been struggling to make progress. You've made a bit of progress, but not where you see everybody online. And that's a big driver to anabolic use.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can imagine.
So you go on your first cycle and you put 15 pounds of muscle on in 10 weeks. And you're like, geez, stronger than you've ever been, fitter than you've ever been, sex drive through the roof. Life's amazing. Yeah, but now you've got to come off, mate. I want to do that.
Welcome to the Fit Dads podcast. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Mr. Brad Thompson, and today we're talking about something we've wanted to discuss for a long time. If you've ever had questions about steroids, TRT, or performance-enhancing drugs, seeking the real answers, not the internet bro science, then this episode is for you. Our guest today is Dave Crosland, widely regarded as the UK's leading expert in performance-enhancing drugs. Dave has been involved in the world of steroids for over 20 years, both as a user and as an advisor, which gives him a unique perspective that's rare. He's not an academic looking in from the outside. He's lived it. A former competitive bodybuilder, Dave is now actively involved in the harm reduction sector, providing education and support to the bodybuilding community. He's developed drugs education programs for the British military. He's been a lead speaker at the National Steroid Research Centre annual conference. And he has built a training program for the police and prison service. He's also a registered witness working with both defence and prosecution in the courts. His goal isn't to tell people what to do, it's to educate them so that if they choose to use PEDs, they're doing it with real knowledge, not dangerous misinformation. This is going to be a no-nonsense, myth-busting conversation, whether you're curious about TRT as a dad and what it involves, or you just want to know more about what happens in gyms across the UK. This episode will hopefully fill in the gaps. Dave, great to have you on the podcast, mate.
No problem. Welcome to it. Glad to be here.
I messaged you out the blue. I wanted someone who was really in the know when it came to this stuff, and you are someone I followed for a long time. I was very entrenched in the bodybuilding world in my early 20s, maybe late teens, and I've never taken anything, hand on heart. I've actually taken one thing more recently, which is BPC 157. I talked quite openly about that for a knee injury that I had.
Very effective peptide.
I used it for my tendon, and I think it wasn't as done as well as I would have done it. I think had I gone to like a doctor or someone better, but that's the only thing I've ever done for an injury. In the terms of the anabolic steroids or TRT, never done that. But I was tempted back in the day, I can't lie. There was a moment when I almost jumped on something, and I wanted to learn more about it. So I looked out in the world at who was discussing this stuff online, and lo and behold, nobody was talking about it. It was very taboo. Bodybuilders weren't talking about it. It was just something that was kind of, you talked about it in your local gyms, the people that were in the know. And then I came across you. And you were very much an open book, and it was a real breath of fresh air to hear someone telling me all these things I had no idea was going on in gyms, in the bodybuilding scene, in that community, and I learned a shit ton, to say the least, from you. So when the opportunity came to talk about this with our audience, I thought, I've got to reach out, and you were phenomenally quick at responding. You were like, yeah, no problem at all, I'll be there, let me know where and when. And that was literally last week, wasn't it, I think? Just over a week ago.
Even though I was late.
Mate, don't worry at all.
But I was late.
And he also pulled up in the biggest truck fit for the bloke if I've ever seen one, with a real rumble to it. We heard you before we saw you.
Yeah, it's my baby. It's my money pit as well, but it's my baby.
I bet, with an engine like that. What litre is it, I've got to ask?
5.7.
5.7 in a truck. What truck is it?
It's a Dodge Ram, but the engine's fully forged, cammed, long headers, loads of stuff being done to it, and loads of stuff to do to it. Amazing.
It's one of them trucks you look at and go, there's something under the hood. That's there.
Impressive. It'll be a supercar killer by the time it's finished. That's a lot of money and probably a couple of years away.
You were racing a Mustang, you said, on the way here, so we know it's got some back into it.
Yeah, he lost.
Let's kick things off. Okay. What are steroids, Dave?
Oh, God. So steroids are anabolic androgenic compounds. So they're synthetic compounds. They're based on three base drugs: testosterone, nandrolone, and dihydrotestosterone. They developed in the most part for medical purposes, for treatments within muscle growth disorders or muscle wasted disorders, testosterone replacement therapy. The first steroid was actually extracted from 700 litres of urine in 1931.
700 litres of urine?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, we have a species, human beings, have always had a fascination with being more manly. Being alpha and all that sort of, it's sort of encoded into our genes, really. A female have an unconscious drive towards a male that they feel will protect them and secure them and give them good offspring and all the rest of it. Maybe in modern land it's probably dissipated a little bit, but that's the baseline of it all. You look at Native Indians and they look to imbibe the spirits of animals to increase their manhood and their strength and their power. Historically we see tribes that have consumed human body parts or animal body parts. In the 1800s, even in Europe, where men were consuming dog testes and bull testes in order to make themselves more virile and more manly. So we've known for a long time where the source of our manliness was. We just didn't understand that it was a hormone factor, etc. Like I say, in 1931 was when the first steroid was extracted. And then by the mid-1930s, we have testosterone. Shortly after that, we see the nandrolone and dihydrotestosterone, which is just a downstream derivative of testosterone. And most anabolics have been developed through medication. So DECA was a muscle wastage disorder disease. It was also used in treatment of osteoporosis in females. The DHTs were generally experiments to try and develop a testosterone replacement compound that didn't have the same negative impacts in the way of like prostate enlargement and things like that. So that's where the base of a lot of the drugs have come from. Some were developed in veterinary husbandry in order, like trenbolone is used in cattle to increase muscle mass in cattle. It was never really, it did have a short period as a human version, but it was very short-lived. So that's where this sort of background came from. 1950s, we start to see them creeping into sports. And there's a lot of folklore around this time about, but I suppose really it was probably, I think it's 1956 World Powerlifting Championships, where we see the Russians doing extremely well against the Americans. Now, the story goes that Dr. John Ziegler, who coached the American lifting team, approached the Russian coach, got him drunk, a bit sort of cliche, I know, and he revealed that they were using testosterone, but revealed that they were having some problems. And the story goes that John developed Dianabol as the only steroid, as far as it goes, that was ever developed for sports performance. There are other stories that that's bullshit, because there were other parties involved in the development of that drug, and it was originally released by a pharmaceutical company called Upjohn. But whether that's true or not is around this time when we start to see countries actively doping athletes. East Germans did a program for 15 years. And to say that anabolics aren't involved in professional sport is laughable, really. It's widespread and has been for a very long time. If you look at the Olympic Games in the UK in 2012,
yep,
I believe there was something like 5,000 medical exemption forms authorised for people to use banned substances.
Okay. Really?
And then we've got this thing about I need some form of asthmatic medication. Now, the thing with asthmatic medications is they are, in a large part, pseudoephedrines, so they are stimulants. And because I've got sports-induced asthma, It's like, when the hell did being an athlete become so unhealthy that it gives you an illness? It's bullshit. And a lot of the medical exemptions are never actually verified by a doctor. It's paperwork rather than an inspection of the individual.
Yeah.
And that's just finances.
Well, when you've got 5,000 of them, how are you
I mean,
gonna...
the number of athletes in the Olympic Games is huge. But it's more a case of, does that compound work for that condition? Is this all make sense? Yes, it does. Fine, bang, 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 off you go. So, I mean, the East Germans were probably the masters. There was a study done a few years ago by Tim, I want to say Pulowski, but I know that's wrong because I'm thinking of Monsters Inc. when I say that. But he's a researcher from Australia. Now, he did a research on satellite cells. So one of the actions of steroids in the human body is that increase the proliferation of satellite cells. Think of these as precursor donor cells to muscle tissue. And they were looking at, it was sponsored by WADA, and they were looking at how long after the administration of anabolics did these satellite cells remain. Now, you want to put this in a real world sort of example of the proliferation of satellite cells and how they remain is when you stop training, obviously you lose muscle mass. When you start, it comes back initially relatively quickly. And we call that muscle memory. That's actually satellite cells. That's the fact that satellite cells are still there. So they recoup and redevelop very, very quickly. And his studies found that even after 5 years, there was still satellite cell presence that was elevated from the use of anabolics. Now, these gymmers knew this. So they would put their athletes on anabolics in the off-season, take them off, so that when they came into the comps and tested, they were clean. But knowing that they had an advantage over a non-previously doped athlete. And when you're at the top of the game, that advantage only needs to be a fraction of a second or a couple of inches, and you're talking world records.
Yeah.
So, and I'd say it's just gone on from then. Over recent years, probably the last decade, anabolics have become much more widespread. Some of that's the internet. Some of that's probably a desensitization to anabolics. And maybe you could even argue that popular media, social media, films have normalized muscular physiques to a degree. But they're no longer the taboo subject they were when I first started talking about it openly. I mean, Rich Piana talks about it a little bit. And then there was me, and that was about it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Now pros are more open. You'll see pros discussing within the bodybuilding, and maybe not so much the strongman world. They're still a bit timid, and I think that's probably due to TV contracts and things like that. But, you know, in the bodybuilding world, pros are much more open. And they've become quite commonplace. There's a lot of discussion around the number of users in the UK, and it's very murky water. Now, when AS UK did their last survey, I think they came up with a number of around 500, 600,000.
Okay.
I personally think I was involved in that project, but I personally think that's extremely skewed.
Do you think it's higher or lower than
Much higher.
I would agree with that.
Because they tend to work mainly on needle exchange program data. And the problem is that needle exchange programs don't engage with a large percentage of users because they're regarded, and excuse the terminology, but they're regarded as smackhead clinic, the heroin clinics. And though they do have a provision for needle exchange for anabolic steroid users, people are uncomfortable in going into a building which is used for drug addicts and alcoholics in case they were seen. So, plus, MediSafe provides the world with needles. Dead easy to get your equipment.
Well, I mean, when I took the BPC 157, I literally just ordered them off Amazon.
Yeah, and you can get them from local chemists. Chemists do needle packs.
Yeah.
So, I've always felt that was tightly screwed. Now, obviously, as you alluded to in the intro, I'm regarded as an expert witness for the courts. So I do a lot of defence and some prosecution work around supply of steroids. The number, and this is just seizures, just doesn't sit with that level of user community. It has to be much higher because of the police aren't catching anywhere near large numbers of steroid dealers. And yet the amount of volume of drug they've recovered would easily supply in excess of 600,000 people. There's probably 200-300 active underground labs in the UK supplying anabolics. Big ones, okay, yeah, we might be down to 20, 30, 40, but across the different brands and stuff, there's absolutely loads. So a few years ago, the Northeast they looked at the user population of anabolics within the Northeast per capita, extrapolate that out, and they estimate about 1 million.
Wow. Just in the Northeast?
No, in total. But
yeah.
use those numbers as a broad spectrum.
Right.
Now, Northeast is a higher concentration of users. Wales is another higher concentration of users.
Is it really? Why is the Northeast?
I think it's image.
Okay.
I mean,
just part of society there.
Yeah, and Wales, there's nothing else to do but lift. Or play rugby or sing. So the thing is with Wales is it's a very rural community in the most part. There's not big urban centres. There are a few, but not loads. So the vast majority of Wales is rural. As a result, the gym culture is very local. So therefore, anabolics were quite open.
Yep.
If it was big branded chains, you wouldn't get as much open conversation back then. So that drove usage because there was just a lot of communication about it. You went and trained in your local church hall or wherever it was, and people were talking about it. So Wales actually was regarded per capita of the user capital of the world.
Was it?
More users per capita in Wales than anywhere else in the world.
That's fascinating, man. Did not expect that stat.
I think we're probably, when you start looking at things like self-admin TRT, I think we're probably over 2 million. Now, in more recent years, you've had companies like Voy, Him or whatever it is.
Hims.
And other companies that have been very actively promoting the availability of TRT. There's been a massive boom in private TRT.
Yeah.
It's expensive. Most people, it averages out somewhere around £150, £200 a month. So people will go to a clinic, get the initial advice, start the initial programs, and then start to feel the pinch. And they go online and, steroids, and there's 20 million sites advertising the sale of it, and they just go, I'll just do it myself.
Let's discuss that, because I'll let into a secret, actually. I had a client come to me, and I told him you were coming on. I said, I've got a steroid expert coming on. And he goes, don't name me by name, but I had a blood test. It came back as being low testosterone. He's actually a dentist as well. And he said, can I get some of this on the NHS? He went to some of his friends who were in the pharmacy world, and they told him the price of it, and he couldn't believe how expensive it was.
Now, that depends.
Okay.
So there's several versions of testosterone. The active ingredient is still testosterone, but anabolics have what they call an ester.
Right.
So when you hear the name of an anabolic, you'll hear the drug name, and then you'll hear the ester name. So testosterone cypionate is testosterone with a cypionate ester.
He told me we were taking testosterone ethanoate.
Enanthate is the enanthate ester. And the ester, if you take pure test, just raw, no ester, it will be in an active system within a matter of hours. So the esters slow the biodegradability of the drug down. They slow the rate at which your body uses it. So testosterone and testosterone are relatively long esters it ranges depending on who you talk to, and there is some difference between people's different metabolism of the drug, but you're looking at somewhere around 10, 12 days before you get to its half-life, which is then it's lowered by half. So the half-life of a drug is the time it takes for it to reduce by half within the body. Okay. So if you say you took 100 milligrams of testosterone enanthate, 10.5 days later, you're going to be at 50 milligram, roughly. Sustanon in the UK, which is a blend of testosterones that was developed for TRT, and what it does is it raises levels, plateaus them, and then they drop off. Normally, for most people, it will last about 14 days. Some, it's less, and it's only 10. Others, it's longer, and it can be as long as 3 weeks. You'll buy that in the UK for £4.17 a mil. Okay?
That sounds really
That's one
cheap.
injection a fortnight, £4.17 plus VAT. That's the trade price for Sustanon.
Wow.
Testosterone in the UK is 96 quid.
Wow.
But you can buy it from Europe for the same price as the Sustanon.
Right.
So companies like Voy, Manuel, all these big TRT clinics, what they do is they buy it all in from Europe.
Right.
And it's £4 a vial.
And the
What you
markup on
pay
that's crazy.
for in TRT private prescription is doctor's consults, blood tests, and prescription charges. The actual drug element is cheap as chips. Wow. But if you try and get an anthate as a British medication at a pharmacist, it's an absolute fortune.
He was saying it was somewhere. He mentioned £700, something like that. Maybe
that may have been for a larger dose. 10 mil.
10 mil.
Yeah,
10 mil.
It's £96 a mil.
Wow.
Whereas a UGL bottle of test, 10 mils, 25 to 35 quid, depending on the brand and the reputation.
He said exactly the same thing. He said it was £40 for a stock load of what he buys compared to £700.
Yeah, and that's why people are driven into the black market for it.
Is it exactly the same though?
No, not in the slightest. Well, no, that's probably a bit of an exaggeration. So, raw powders for steroids, in the most part, are manufactured in China.
Okay.
That's even for the pharmaceutical trade.
Right.
So China is one of the biggest producers of raw chemicals for the pharmaceutical industry.
Right.
Basically, the Chinese government didn't really give a naff what they did if it was going outside of China. So companies would have a license to produce certain chemicals, but they were manufacturing even the other ones and sell them into the black market. It was a lucrative trade. They were making a lot of money. More recently, the government in China has gone, well, hang on a minute. We didn't realise how big a trade this was. We thought you were, a couple of kilo here and that was the end of it. This is not. We want a cut of this. So now they've clamped down saying that all exports have to be paid for it in taxes. Yeah,
they've taxed it highly now.
And that they've enforced the taxes that should have been there in the first place.
Okay. They weren't getting taxed, really.
They weren't getting taxed because it wasn't going through a normal supply chain. It was all black market. So it was all random parcels getting sent out by someone that works at the factory.
I'm with you.
And the other thing they've done is say if you want to produce drugs, even if it is for the black market, that you're not licensed to, which is what they were allowing to happen before because they thought the quantities were small. You have to get a license because they've just realised they're missing a lot of income. That's had a big knock-on effect to the market in a supply basis.
Right.
The biggest problem was that raw powders that were getting sent by China to UK to be made into injectable and oral steroids were agreed at a set price, and China's like, we can't afford to do it at this. So prices have changed a bit, availability has changed a little bit, and India's stepped in a little bit for producing raws now. But the bulk of it comes from over there. And so the difference is that when it goes into a pharmaceutical environment, it's batch tested, it's compliant to levels, it's got hygiene certificates, it's pure, there's no heavy metal contamination, that's all removed. That doesn't happen with UGL. UGL is basically a recipe of raw powder, benzoyl alcohol, benzobenzoate, which is a solvent. The alcohol is there to keep it sterile because it's a multi-dispensable vial, and a carrier oil, which can be anything from rapeseed oil, ethyl oleic in the more synthetic versions, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's heated up, everything's dissolved, it's filtered, decanted into a vial, capped, and sold. There's no post-test, though some labs will send their samples to Janaszek, which is in Eastern Europe, which is a legit testing laboratory. But they really do that more from a point of view of a marketing ploy, so they can say, look, our test is 96% pure or whatever, more than they're actually concerned about pumping out genuine stuff. So this is the first problem you see within the black market product is hygiene.
Yeah.
The second problem is it genuinely the dose it's supposed to be, or even the drugs it's supposed to be? Now, with this recent shortage of raw powders, we've seen a lot of drugs not be what they're supposed to be. Now, I run a blood testing company called Eval. So I see probably 10,000, 15,000 sets of bloods a year. And in the last couple of months, I have seen more underdosed drugs through blood testing, than I have ever.
Is this people coming to you and saying...
People saying they wanted bloods done, I'm on 250 milligram a test a week, and I look at the bloods and go, no, you're not.
So you expect it to work a certain range, and they're not there. Okay.
Even when you accept a little bit of variation in the rate of metabolism of the drug, 250 milligrams should put your test levels, which is measured in nmol, around the 50 mark.
Yep.
If it's at 9... then there's something definitely wrong with what you're taking.
Yeah. I just want to come back to, obviously, our audience and us in particular are very wet behind the ears for this kind of stuff. And so you mentioned something called a UGL, which is an underground lab. And this is essentially like we could do it in this front room.
Yeah.
Like these are just
some of them are. Some of them are in kitchens and living rooms.
Yeah,
of people's
kitchens,
houses.
living rooms, people's houses, like units they buy for this stuff. And it's not the most sterile places. I'm sure they try and do as best they can, but it's not.
So
tested,
yeah,
right?
this is something that people get very panic about, and it's a little bit misunderstood. The area needs to be relatively sterile, but the drug's sterilised by being filtered.
Right.
So even if you did get contaminants in the drug at the manufacturing process, i.e. making it up, the filtration system would remove those.
Okay.
So as long as it's filtered correctly, and the vial it's going into has no bacterial load in the first instance, that's truly sterile, then the drug itself should be relatively sterile from a point of view of contaminants of that nature. What it's not going to be sterile from is things like heavy metals or other compounds. But what it will be is from like bits of dirt and that side of thing. It's generally quite sterile. The issue is other contaminants and other compounds when they come into play. But I have seen UGLs that were literally cooking their oils in an oven tray in an oven in somebody's kitchen. I've seen it that bad.
So they're cooking food in it 1 minute, the next minute they're cooking steroids.
Yeah, I've seen it that bad.
Wow.
But at the other end of the scale, I have seen some quite professional setups as well.
Brilliant.
So a lot of that is scale of economies, but yeah, so when I talk about the sterility of UGL, it's not about dirt contaminations in the compound. It's about other chemicals in the compound.
You mentioned heavy metals. If someone is, quite a big steroid user, has been for like maybe a few decades, and they have this heavy metal contaminant, what's the repercussions of that?
It's not something that's going to be super problematic, but you will start to get a general sort of... What's the best way of describing it?
Because I know when you get mercury poisoning, that's like a cognitive thing, isn't it? You start to
that's
have
quite
issues.
extreme. But so heavy metal contaminants will just generally decline your functionality of your health.
Okay.
So don't get me wrong, hormones, particularly drugs like nandrolone, trenbolone, can really affect your cognitive function. In fact, nandrolone, DECA, or MPP is its fast-acting derivative, lowers neuropeptide Y and has been shown to reduce memory, both short-term and long-term, particularly short-term to long-term transition. So there are definitely cognitive issues with some of the compounds.
Yeah.
But yeah, the heavy metal contamination, I suppose the easy way to describe it is that it creates a base level of stress within the body.
Okay.
Now, the body has... In fact, the redundancy of the human body is quite amazing when you look at how some people live their lives and the fact that they can still function and live. I mean, the amount of alcohol it takes and the years of alcohol abuse it takes to actually be fatal to somebody is quite shocking. And the same with drugs like heroin and stuff. The amount of time someone can expose themselves to a drug like that and live, it just shows you how adaptive and how resilient the human body actually truly is. But obviously, the more stress you give it from one factor, or the more you reduce its capability to deal with. And when I talk about stress, I'm not talking about being worried about paying the bills. I'm talking about system stressors, system inflammation. Then obviously the less capacity it has to deal with other things that may come along.
Yeah.
So you might find that if you get a cold, you get it worse from somebody else. Things like that. Because your resilience just isn't there.
Yeah. It's deteriorating everything. When does it go from kind of like general steroid use to steroid abuse? What is there a certain amount you need to take? Is there a certain frequency?
I think there's two ways of looking at this. One is unnecessary usage, and this is particularly prevalent within the TRT environment. The amount of people that are doing TRT, but they're using doses that exceed TRT. Now, TRT, the clue is in the name, testosterone replacement therapy. You're replacing natural levels. So now if you've been suffering with low test, bringing that up to a healthy level of, say, 19, 20, 22, 23, 24 and more, you're going to feel really good off the back of that. But that will normalise over a bit of time. You've probably done regimes within your own health where you've brought supplement in and you've seen a genuine benefit from it. But then after a month of using it, it's like, I don't really feel that anymore. It's not that the benefit's gone. It's just that you've adapted to that to be your normal environment. And that's the same with TRT. So then what you start to see people is pushing it a little bit higher because they want that initial feel-good factor again.
Interesting.
And you've got to be very disciplined around anabolics if you're doing them for TRT, that this is a medicine, this is a treatment. And in the same way, if you overuse painkillers long-term, you're going to end up with issues. The same will happen with the TRT, particularly if you don't know the nuances of how these drugs operate within the body. So you've got that caveat of steroid abuse, where you're using it for a genuine purpose, but you're using too much or adding other things in that shouldn't really be. There is then also a big psychological thing, which no one's really talking about. When you take something that either improves your physical appearance or improves how you feel, you very quickly adapt to that being necessary. There is a danger. Now, this is not so much TRT, but this is when people start pushing into cyclitic doses. No one likes going backwards. So let's say you do your first cycle, you've been struggling training. I might sound like I'm a bit over the place, but it will all come together. It's like a Guy Ritchie film. It all comes together in the end. So you've been training, you're natural, you've been struggling to make progress. You've made a bit of progress, but not where you see everybody online. And that's a big driver into anabolic use.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can imagine.
So you go on your first cycle and you put 15 pounds of muscle on in 10 weeks. And you're like, geez, stronger than you've ever been, fitter than you've ever been, sex drive through the roof. Life's amazing. Yeah, but now you've got to come off, mate. Don't want to do that. So it is, and now I've always had that attitude, as you said in the intro, that do what you want to do. But I'm also very hard on be honest about what you're doing, because if you start to normalize your usage, and this is where we start getting, oh yeah, I'm doing 300 milligram, but bear in mind TRT is about 100 to 120 milligram a week for most people. Yeah, I'm doing 300 milligram, that's my TRT. Oh no, it's not. But you've normalized it as being that. That's actually a low cycle. So this is where the other avenue of abuse comes in. When you start to normalize the drug and start to normalize behavior that isn't truly what it is, then you start to get a twisted relationship with the compounds. And that starts to sound a lot like addiction when you start to break it down. So I think abuse, if you take super high doses that you probably don't really need, which is what I did, then you could argue that's abuse. But if you're aware and conscious, no, this is really high doses, I know I'm pushing the boundary here, then it's a conscious move. But if you take 300, 350 milligram of testosterone a week and try to claim it's TRT, and in your own head truly believe that that's the base of what you need, then you're abusing a drug. Because your relationship with that drug is gone. And you're no longer, one, respecting what it can do, but two, you're normalizing a dose that isn't required. And I think for a lot of people, it's very difficult to keep that relationship of this is a tool that I use for a purpose. This is not a requirement. It's a tool. And as soon as you lose that sort of attitude and the drugs become a necessity, hang on a minute, mate. You know, he's down the needle exchange for his heroin because it's a necessity. No, all right, steroid users don't rob people. But I have seen dodgy financial decisions made around the fact that they need to buy their drugs. And so then you start to get more of an addictive type behaviour. I know, oh God, I wouldn't like to say a number really, because it's probably going to be way under what it actually is. But the amount of people that I've worked with or I've had engagement with who have ended up with serious health concerns but will not stop the anabolics. Because to stop the anabolics for them, you're threatening their actual identity. Because now they identify with one, how they feel, but two, how they look. And the amount of people within the user community that all their confidence is linked to the drug use. And so anything that threatens that or anything that requires that to be reduced or pulled away from actually threatens who they are. And it's very difficult for them to deal with that. I mean, I know people that have had heart bypasses, heart attacks, kidney failure. I know a guy that was going on to his third kidney.
Oh, my God.
And was planning his cycle of tren.
Jesus Christ.
Which is the most toxic anabolic for kidneys there is. It's like, what are you? Oh, well, I've got a genetic disease. No, mate, it's not frying your kidneys that fast. And you've been lucky that you've had 2 family members that have been able to donate direct to you, so you haven't sat in a waiting list, for a donation.
So he'd had 2 family members donate kidneys.
He was on his second, so he'd had 1 donation. His first kidney failed.
Right.
Second kidney failed.
Oh, my God.
But it didn't fail for not taking, so it wasn't the transplant that failed. It failed because of abuse post. Now, yes, he had a genetic thing, but it was nowhere near doing the damage. He was doing the damage because he would not stop abusing anabolics.
Wow.
And that's an extreme example. Someone else who had a heart bypass, again, can't leave the anabolics alone because it threatens who they are.
This is what drew me to your story. I was trying to think how long ago it was. It must have been over 12 years ago now since I first heard about your story. Because I'm 34. Maybe I was in my early 20s. When
that sounds about right. I think it'd be about 12 years, 11, 12 years when I stopped.
Yeah. And the one thing you said back then was, and it's a perspective I'd never heard before when it came to steroids, is about identity. And you said on some of your early videos, I did it because it gave me that sense of confidence and invincibility, and I love that, and I got addicted to that, and I love that feeling. And I thought, that's interesting. I'd never heard that before, people doing it, because it actually made them better in terms of their mental health as well.
It definitely can affect cognitive function. You definitely do feel good on it. You can feel invincible on it. For the most part, I held a fairly reasonably good relationship with my drugs, even though they were at very high doses. But there were periods when I went down a rabbit hole.
When you say high doses, what we're talking?
My peak 4.5 gram of gear a week, which is very high. I mean, there's people done higher, but it's still a very high dose.
Wow. I mean, I've
but that was I was 400 pounds, so I wasn't exactly small. But that was a deliberate experiment. So I experimented on myself. One, I had 2 projects that sort of ran simultaneously. So the first one was, how big can a human being get?
Wow, you were trying to...
Yeah, I wanted to see, I had an unscratchable itch of how big can I really get? And then the other one was, because I was already working in harm reduction at that point, was what is the effect of really high doses? Because no one had spoken about it. You can't do a study on that. You can't take someone off the street and go, here's 4 gram of gear, let's see if it kills you. Yeah. You just can't do it. So, there was this self-experiment of what actually happens at these doses. What happens when you go to 3 grams of testosterone? What happens when you do a gram a deca? And, I grew. I got very big.
450 pounds. I mean,
415.
Most competitive bodybuilders, like if they get to 300 pounds, they've done pretty well, and they've got a considerable amount of muscle mass at 300. It's quite a bit of a pivotal number for a lot of professionals, isn't it?
Yeah.
You were 450.
415.
415. Wow.
Yeah, and then I would say I maintained 360 comfortably and looked like a bodybuilder. I had a 24.5-inch arm, a 72, 73-inch chest.
Colossal.
24-inch calf and a
24-inch calf.
I think it was about
his torso.
35-inch thigh.
Wow.
So I was a big boy. I wasn't the leanest, and I wouldn't say I was a good bodybuilder because I was big, but I wasn't the most athletic. Obviously, at that size, you're not going to be. But yeah, so, but there were times in that experiment where I truly disappeared around a drug rabbit hole. And actually, I'd been having problems with my kidneys. I'd been kept going back to the doctor, and he kept saying, "Oh no, that's normal for you. That's normal for you." It wasn't. My kidneys were failing. But I'd disappeared. I wasn't looking at ways in which I could improve my diet, though. It was actually pretty good, should I say, or improve my training. I just started looking at what more drugs can I take, and it was that sort of snapped me and went, no, I've gone somewhere I don't want to go here. And I had a moment of clarity, sat on the toilet at 3 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning, injecting growth hormone because I was pulsating it. And it was like, what am I doing? And I woke up the next morning and I just said to my wife, I said, I'm stopping. And she says, now we always had a rule, if she said stop, I would stop. And she said, funny, because I was going to ask to talk to you today about this.
Wow, same day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I stopped. And I literally just did, boom, stop, done. So I was lucky in the sense that I walked away from it mentally very easily. But I know a lot that don't, or even can't.
What's been the repercussions of that for you today?
Health-wise? So it's a combination of size and drugs. So it isn't effectively one or the other. Here we go. Let's start the list. So I have stage 4. Say stage 4. It's probably stage 3 now, actually, renal failure, because it has improved. I have heart failure. I have an ejection rate of 30%. I have an ICD, so it's not a pacemaker. It's the one that basically my heart can never stop running. You can take my head off, my heart will still run. That's 24-hour monitored. So every time I go to bed on a night, it downloads all the information from the day to the monitoring station. They're the main internal health issues. So my heart is trashed. Simple as that.
Why is the heart taking such a battering?
Drugs.
Yeah.
So
but what is it about the drugs?
They thicken the heart wall.
Yeah.
Right.
Blood pressure, again, thickens the heart wall. And the problem is, as the heart gets larger and the wall gets thicker, it gets less flexible. Now, the heart's a pump. If you've got a set of bellows, but you can only move them a couple of inches, the volume of air you're going to push out the end of the bellows is going to be very low, which is your ejection rate. That's the same with my heart. It has a very short stroke, doesn't flex very well, and is too large, so it can't put pressure behind the pump of blood. So as a result, the amount of blood flow I can generate out of my heart is very low.
Is it big because there's obviously this theory around steroids don't only grow external muscles, they grow internal muscles,
That's part of it, yes.
organs and things like that.
Part of it is size and physical demands of the body required. And part of the reason my kidneys failed was drugs. The other part of the reason my kidneys failed was they were trying to support a 415-pound man.
Yeah.
Structurally, the bones in my feet are destroyed. I can't stand on my toes. If I do, I'll be in a wheelchair for weeks because of the pain. I have to wear special inserts in all footwear. And I can't walk for really extended periods of time because the pain gets too high. That's from doing 1,000-pound calf raises. I have 3 damaged discs in my back. Not all from training. I was in an accident as well. So I've got nerve impingement coming out of my back that's going down my legs. I've got a dead spot on my left thigh because the nerve's just not working. And they generate some foot pain as well. I regularly pinch my femoral nerve, which then causes pain down the front of my right quad. C6 and C7 in my neck are what is officially termed as squishing nerves. So I end up with nerve issues down both my arms. I also have carpal tunnel in this one from nerve impingement and femoral nerve, the other one. Ulna, I think it is, in this one impinged. So I get issues with, I always get it mixed up. I think it's these fingers in this one and these in this one. As well as a neck impingement down both those arms. So my grip's not great, and to grip hard is painful. And I've got 22 muscle tears.
22?
Including a full detachment of my left pec, both major attachments.
Wow.
And my short head shoulder attachment of my right bicep. But I did that a few weeks ago, actually. And the rest are partial tears. But that's just
From training for so many years.
That's just from training hard, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
See, I never trained to be a bodybuilder. I trained because I loved it. And I loved the pushing the limits and pushing myself as hard as I could. And my initial attraction to anabolic, because I was a staunch natural for several years, even competed as a natural. My move into anabolics wasn't driven by a desire to get bigger. It was driven by a desire to train harder. I wanted to be able to train harder. I wanted to be able to train more intensely. I wanted to push the boundaries, and drugs allowed me to do that. So that was my drive into anabolics. The size was actually more of a side effect. It wasn't really my main concern. But then I realised, actually, I grow really well.
You do it you basically do it for the opposite of what most young lads do it for nowadays. People do it for better engagement online, to look bigger, to have that physique
none of that was
presence.
around at that time. You know, I mean,
of course, yeah.
At peak, my arms were 26.5 inch.
Wow, 26 and a half. I saw a guy actually on a reel today, and he was at some convention, huge, monstrous bodybuilder. And the guy went over and said, "Let me see how big your arms are." And his arms were ridiculous, and he had 23 and a half. And so you saying you had 26 is just an extra 3 inches.
Yeah, there are a couple of pictures of me throwing a bicep next to people, and my arms are bigger than their heads. It got to the point where when I went to expos and stuff, pros wouldn't stand near me.
Yeah.
You had to move away because they just didn't.
They didn't want to look small. That's the biggest flex.
That sounds really big-headed, and I didn't mean it in that. I didn't really notice it. I remember Branch Warren pissing off one day, and I was like, what's wrong with him? And then I went round to CMP stand, and I was friends with Alvin Small at the time, who was far from small. He was a 280, 290 competitor on stage, so he was a big boy, and he was sponsored by CMP, and I knew Alvin, we were friends. I went around to see him, and we were chatting, and CMP photographer came up, so I need to get a picture, and Alvin's like, you can piss off. Really? I'm standing next to him.
Wow.
And he's an amateur, he does this for fun. So I'm supposed to be a pro, and he was really open about it. He said, there's no way I'm standing next to him.
You realise they take their physique and their look and their image very
Business.
seriously.
It's business, though, at the end of the day,
100%.
Rich Piano, we used to talk online, got on really well. Met him at Expo, wouldn't speak to me after that.
Really?
Rich, I like Rich, he was a nice guy, but he had a lot of insecurities.
That came across for sure. I mean, he's another guy that I was totally and utterly obsessed with. Like, I never went down the steroid route, but I was obsessed with guys that were just pushing the boundaries and actually being open about it, because that was the most endearing thing. And Rich was another guy who just didn't give a shit. He was very open about what he was taking. I think he was talking about at one point he was spending £15,000 to £20,000 per cycle. It was just the money involved was unbelievable.
There was a little bit of sensationalism with Rich.
Was there? Okay.
And there was a little bit of it was truthful to a point, but he was the first to do it. Mm-hmm. So, even though the fact that it was a bit of a limited truth, and there was a bit of marketing in there. Rich was a master of marketing, very, very clever man when it came to marketing and how to engage people. Yeah. He was the first to even openly talk about anything, so he was still a groundbreaker in that sense. How it actually came about, I was sponsored by SSN. Now, SSN are a South African company, same as USN. Now, in South Africa, SSN has the domestic market. So USN went into Europe and the wider world because of that. SSN didn't bother. USN became a major brand, and SSN were like, oh, we've missed out on here. So they decided to start and expand. And I was sponsored by SSN. And the guy that ran the UK leg of it had said, we were out of body power. Rich's line was 4 times longer than anybody else's. And it was him that came up with the idea of, why don't we, your next push, because I dieted down for the expo, he says, why don't we for your next push document it all? Are you happy talking about it? I said, yeah, I don't give a shit about talking about anabolics, it's not a problem. Now, they were looking at I can't remember if it was SSN or it was him, were looking at bringing a line out called Muscle Freak, which they were talking about me potentially being the Rich Piana version of that. So the more I thought about it, and the more, because I'd already made this decision that I was going to do this experiment, the more I thought about it, the more he sold me the idea. And then SSN pulled the plug on it. But I went ahead anyway. So that project, to some extent, was inspired by Rich. Wow. Along with SSN. But when we were talking about it, because the one thing I said was, look, this isn't going to be American sensationalistic crap. I want to remove that element that is of riches, and I want it to be brutally honest. You know, if I feel like absolute dog shit and my arse is hanging out because of the drugs or because of this, I want to be able to say that. I don't want, and they were fine with it. Well, he was. Unfortunately, the head office weren't. They panicked a little bit and pulled that. But at the time, I was the heavyweight, and James Hollingshead was the junior. That's how long ago that was.
Yeah.
James was the junior within the team.
He's monstrous now.
Yeah, I'm actually doing a seminar with him on the 20th of June.
Yeah, he's one of those. He's one of the old school, very much of like the bulky, mass-looking physique, and I think he does struggle for placings in today's competition, doesn't he? Because he's not he's more mass-based like some of the old school bodybuilders.
He just never seems to have got it quite together, and he's never managed to fully do it. He's either come in lean but flat and much smaller than normal, or he's coming big but full but not quite sharp enough.
He's more of the Dorian Yates kind of look style.
He's got a nice physique. I like James' physique.
I think if I was going to go all out, he'd be the guy I'd be looking to look like.
He's one of the few bodybuilders, pro bodybuilders that I know that isn't completely obsessed with bodybuilding.
He's got other interests.
Yeah.
He's a big gamer, isn't he?
Gamer, rollerblader.
Rollerblade,
skateboards.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you seen James?
I've not. As you're speaking about it, I'm really tempted just to pull him
big
up now.
guy, mate.
He's as big as you get in terms of bodybuilding.
He went to a Comic-Con dressed as God of War.
Oh, Kratos, yeah.
Yeah, and he just
swept
It
up.
looked like he'd been taken out of the computer. It was just perfect for it.
I'm going to have to pull this up.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm going to have
look.
to pull this up. What's his name again? Sorry.
James
Hollingshead.
James Hollingshead. Let's have a look. I need to see this.
He's a big boy, but yeah, I guess just it's fascinating to hear all this again because I've been so far removed from it. My interests have moved more towards endurance nowadays rather than the bodybuilding world.
I mean, saying that, there's a lot of anabolic use within that world as well.
That's probably what I want to get onto next because I look up some. I'm dead into my triathlons now, right? And I'm looking at
Sorry, I've just pulled up the picture of
Huge.
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Huge.
Oh, that's absolutely
It just
amazing.
looks like he's been pulled out of the machine.
It really does.
fair
Really
play
does.
for him to commit into it as well.
Love that. Sorry to cut you off, Ryan.
No, it's all good. Again, as a guy I've mentioned a few times in this podcast, one of my favourite triathletes, he does Ironman. He's got the fastest Ironman time in the world. He recently recorded the highest VO2 max ever recorded in the history of humans, 101. Christian Blumenfeld is called. And this guy is a machine. But I look at him and I just think, how much of it is him? How much of it is something else going on? I don't know. I'm very...
The other thing is...
I'm too romantic, mate, with this stuff.
Where does natural stop and where does assisted start?
Well, people say if you take creatine, you're assisting something.
Yeah,
if you take something to optimise your sleep, you were taking something.
Is it peptides? Is that the benchmark? Because peptides are just chains of amino acids.
Yeah.
Where do you cross over? You know, stimulants. So caffeine, ephedrine.
Well-known performance enhancers.
Well, they had a look to banning caffeine at one point and just realised they wouldn't be able to make it sick. That's how much they regarded as caffeine being a stimulant.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, it is chest ease. Works as a fat burner and pseudoephedrine. You can buy it in boots. It's an asthmatic, like a bronchial, drug. So is that assisted if you go and buy an over-the-counter flu cold medicine to help with your fat loss? It's GLPs. Where is the limit? So it is a. I mean, I know Mo. You definitely when you start getting into hormone therapy. You are assisted, but where are we with the peptides and different types of peptides and
a lot of people they use the law as clarification, don't they? So obviously in the UK, peptides are illegal. They're illegal to take from a human consumption.
Not right. So you can take as many peptides as you want.
Okay.
What you can't do is sell them as being human products.
Right. That's right. Because when
they
I bought
are
them
not
online,
cleared for human use.
Yeah, it does say
the research
not
drugs
for human consumption.
Yeah, the research drugs.
Yeah.
So the developmental research drugs, some are good, some aren't good, some have some dubious histories. others don't. But so you can sell peptides completely legal if they are for research purposes only. Cambridge University has a peptide site.
Does it?
Yeah.
Wow.
But it's legit research peps. A lot of the peptide sites are obviously selling them for human consumption. Now, if they were to get looked at, it would come down to how was the information conveyed on the site, what due diligence did they take regarding the customer, and all these factors would be weighed in for a judge or a jury to decide whether they were knowingly selling to humans for consumption or if they were marking it as such. Now, when you go on a lot of the sites, they do put up research studies of how these compounds work in humans, or they give dosing advice for a human. Now, if you do that, you're stuffed. You're not going to get away in a court. But when we look at resources for enforcement, risk to public purse, social outrage for that topic, peptides are really, really low down. I mean, I think people are going to be more upset about smoking in public than they are about someone using peptides. So it doesn't get any weight to it. So there's no money for it. They don't bother with it.
Yeah.
The only time they get involved is somebody suffers of ill health or a health, like a loss of life or something, from consuming a peptide or a cocktail of peptides or a peptide being not what it's supposed to be.
It's funny that, isn't it, how the news and like what's a hot topic essentially governs how much we put into stuff like marijuana, for example. No one's dying from marijuana, so we're not putting loads of resources from a public point into that.
It's social pressure. There's several factors. A big factor of how a drug is classified and its criminality is health impacts. But another factor is social perception, social awareness, political pressure, that side of things.
Massively, yeah.
You will find, and you probably have seen it yourself, that there have been situations where somebody has passed away because they've used a certain drug. And those parents have then started a big campaign about raising awareness for this drug and how the law should be changed. And then that will get discussed in Parliament because they'll go to their MP. Their MP will take it to the House. And occasionally, so I don't sit on the ACMD, which is Advisory Council on Misuse of Drug, but I am part of the Steroid Information Committee. So when they do a review of the classification of steroids and whether they should change the law around it, they hold an evidence gathering day, and I go down and present and give them basically where we are within steroids and usage at that point.
So your information and like research
I'm not the only one.
has to be topped up. Right? You have to really know what you're talking about.
I mean, I'm not the only
current
one.
basis.
So there'll be people from Change Grow Life, which are the biggest holder of needle exchange contracts. There'll be some idiot from UK anti-doping, because they're just the biggest bunch of retards on the planet. I hate them with a passion.
Why do you hate UK anti-doping?
Because they're just... I haven't got any issue with banning drugs in sport. I really haven't. You know, in fact, I agree with it. I think the enhanced games is a good idea in the sense that you separate users from non-users, and I think that the tested drugs, in the same as they do in the bodybuilding world, should be really heavily governed to make sure that all athletes are natural. But the issue, and this happened with bodybuilding, so many moons ago, Olympia decided to randomly drug test the competitors, and they saw a marked reduction in physical mass on stage. And the sponsor turned around and said, "We ain't sponsoring this shit.
We want the freaks.
If you don't give us freaks." Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the same with if the Olympic Games didn't get record breakers, and unfortunately some of the records that currently stand are potentially with people that have had a chemical advantage, then why watch it? It's a bit boring then. I want to see records getting broken.
Yeah. Well, we did a podcast episode all about the enhanced games. We discussed it front to back, sponsorships, ethical nature of it, and we said it'd be fascinating if
the records were very similar to the actual ones now.
Yeah, it's quite telling. I think this is going to be a real. I think one of the main reasons, because they've tried, so many governing bodies have tried to sue this organisation around the enhanced game, because I think there's a part of them that's worried that they're going to release what they're taking. They're going to show athletes on stuff, and the records are going to be very similar, very, very similar. And the money's huge. Like they're offering like is it £1 million if you break certain, like 100-meter world record, £1 million.
Yeah.
Is it 50-meter, 100-meter freestyle?
They've got some big funding,
huge funding, but they've obviously it's all like tech billionaires that are in there, isn't it?
And I think it's all skewed. This is one thing we said in the episode, Dave, about you may have got Olympians taking part in the enhanced games who are like middle of the pack. They're nowhere near the top. So if their records begin to match the Olympic games, is that just down to I don't know, that they would have been middle of the pack and now they're taking a bit of a payday?
And there's always going to be genetic freaks.
100%.
You know, there's always going to be people that just are freaks. And there are people within the bodybuilding world that are rumoured to have been natural. Ronnie Coleman was rumoured to be natural up until his pro card. And he was massive.
Yeah.
So there will always be genetic freaks, but there will always be bullshit as well. And it's a difficult one to circumvent. But anyway, going back to UKAD, they just don't live in the real world. And what they want is a complete criminalisation of steroids. Now, steroids aren't illegal to have or to use. They're only illegal to supply. And our standpoint, the UK standpoint, is quite unique in legislation through the world when it comes to anabolics. But it's also an actual model that other countries have looked to emulate. Because at the end of the day, if you want to control that drug and supply of that drug is illegal, why do you need to criminalise a user? Because if you're enforcing the supply law, there's no drugs for the user to get. So all you need to do is actually action the existing law, and it's efficient. But to give you an idea of the priority of steroids, though it is changing slightly, UK Border Force in a 30-day period allocate half a day to steroid detection for importation, because they're more interested in firearms, bombs, drugs, main drugs, coke and heroin and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
UKD have a hot nut for it, but they're very frustrated because they have no enforcement powers, and they've tried to get enforcement powers for years. The police don't want to criminalise users because it's just a waste of their time arresting Jimmy because he's got 2 bottles of test. It's just stupid. I think now with the boom in TRT, it makes it even more difficult because the user population has grown again. But everyone else, so the police, the Harm Reduction Society, organisations, the universities, we're all singing and saying, no, educate, yes, criminalise the user, no, it won't serve any purpose.
It's a stark contrast to some other countries. I'm not sure which Scandinavian country it is, but there's one. Is it Sweden, Norway, somewhere?
It's one of them, yeah.
From what I hear, I only know because I saw a YouTube video about
this has been challenged in the European Court of Rights.
Is it? Well, basically, there was a YouTuber, and he's got a decent amount of muscle mass, and he was aware that if you look like you take steroids and you pass through their borders, they'll
stop you around and send you back.
They can do, yeah.
They did it with a pro bodybuilder.
Was it Jay Cutler or someone like that got arrested, I think? Literally put into custody.
Yeah, they got off the plane, they arrested him, stuck him in a room, put him on another plane and sent him away.
Yeah.
Because they look like they use anabolics.
Yeah.
Now, there has been people within the country that have suffered from this. And I believe it went to European court and they won a case that it was discriminatory.
Oh, wow.
However, that doesn't seem to have filtered down into the actual real world action of the police within the country. But they'll arrest you if they think you look like using steroids.
Well, this guy, what he did was, this YouTuber, he intentionally put one of these like muscle suits on underneath his clothes. So he was like, I want to get arrested. I want to see if they'll turn me around. And the guys actually followed him. And then he actually got pulled aside and said, can we check your stuff? Yeah. And they didn't. He looked massive under his top, but they didn't turn away. They said, can we check your stuff? It's fine. Yeah. And then he went around. Jamie, pull this up.
I mean,
have a look which country it is. I need to know, because he went around to the local gyms, and obviously there's a big steroid community in every country, right? And he found these guys, and he's like, what's it like living in a country where the thing you love doing and the thing you take most days and weeks is completely illegal, and actually to look a certain way and the look you want to go for and to be free in the way you look in this country is illegal. Denmark's
another country.
Is it?
So it's not now Denmark. They I think it's changed now, but gyms would sign up to random drug testing for their members, and they would get to display a smiley face on the door, which showed that they were a drug-free gym. If you didn't sign up to random drug testing for your members, then you've got a sad face that you put on your gym. So from my point of view, that's great. I know which gyms I want to train in. I want to train in the one with all the gearheads. I just look for the miserable faces. But I'm pretty sure it is Denmark. Within Denmark, they also have a social culture where they don't celebrate individual sports.
Okay.
So they socially look down on bodybuilding because they think it has been selfish. And they look at team sports. So they want you to be involved in team sports, and they support team sports.
That's interesting.
Which was quite funny at the time because they'd had an Olympic champion in a single pursuit sport.
Is it Denmark?
Sweden.
No, it's Sweden or Norway is what you're on about.
Yeah, so Sweden's legislation forbids that not only the sale and possession of steroids, but the presence of steroids in the body. I feel for these pro bodybuilders who've gone into Sweden and not got arrested. It's a bit like...
Yeah, it's a bit like, you don't look like
There's no bigger diss to your ego, is there?
What you also find with these countries is because they're landlocked,
Okay.
and Denmark was the same. Denmark, there you go, here's a weird one. So in Denmark, as a gym, you can't sell a protein shake and add a scoop of creatine to it.
What?
Because Denmark states you are creating a new product that hasn't passed testing to be allowed to you. Now, if you have a product that is a protein shake with creatine in it, that's fine.
Okay.
But if you, as a gym owner, offer a scoop of pre-workout with a scoop of creatine, no, you're making a new product. You can't do that.
That's fascinating.
And the other thing that I found fascinating was that in all of these countries, like Sweden and Norway is very similar as well, they will just travel over the border to buy the supplements and then just drive back in with the supplements.
Great.
So stuff like protein powders and creatine and stuff like that is actually difficult to get hold of. So they actually just go over the border, buy it, bring it back in.
That reminds me of when we used to drink in bars, and you weren't allowed. There was a law that came in where, because they got quad vods, so you used to have quad vodkas, and there was a law where you weren't allowed to sell quad vods.
Yep.
And so what companies started doing was, bars, they go, it's 2 for 1 on double vodkas.
Yeah.
So you were essentially buying into a quad, but they couldn't sell it as a quad. They'd sell it as 2 doubles.
Yeah, there was a big push as well around bottles for booze and stuff like that because the amount of people that... I mean, I was actually involved with an alcohol fatality in a club.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I used to do a bit of alcohol education, and so I had to go in afterwards and educate the staff. The club was found to be not at fault, but basically this kid had got a skin fill, come into the club. He looked relatively normal, was functional. There was no obvious sign he was rat-arsed. Bought a booth with a full bottle of Grey Goose, and then he drank the bottle of Grey Goose.
The whole thing?
Yeah. Left, still being very compass mentis, got in the back of a taxi, and then just collapsed and died. Taxi driver brought him back. This was a sick bit. Taxi driver brought him back and started to drag him out of the taxi, moaning that he hadn't paid his fare, thinking he was just passed out.
Oh my God.
Didn't realise he died. The
God.
doorman actually realised something was wrong, and they got him out of the taxi and were trying to resuscitate him. And the taxi driver was trying to keep his legs out of the way so he can move his car and go off and get another fare.
Oh my God.
But yeah, it was that was messy.
That's crazy. I mean, yeah, there's got to be more laws around alcohol consumption as well, hasn't there? Because you can just go into any club and buy literally a 5-litre bottle, and for one person.
They do think if alcohol was invented tomorrow and it wasn't existing, it would never pass.
100%.
It would never pass.
I mean, there's all these. You've always seen that classic bar chart where down the side you've got all these different drugs, and it's like length of time that it deteriorates the body, or quickest time it deteriorates the body. And you've got things like marijuana and that stuff at the bottom, and then you've got like your heroin, your cocaine, and at the top is this huge bar that goes out, it's just alcohol. And it's the speed at which it deteriorates your body is phenomenal.
Ethanol's a poison. The active ingredient is ethanol, and ethanol's a poison.
But it's phenomenal that something like that is sold in, like, I can go to Tesco down the road and buy a drug.
It's such a large percentage of our social structure,
That's it.
of our social environment. Obviously, there's a big financial incentive from a point of view of taxes and everything else that comes off the back of it. But it is so socially ingrained to us. It'd probably take 3 decades of re-education before you bred that out of.
And it's so
community.
antisocial. So,
Well, it's like anything, isn't it? I mean, it's the abuse or the excess of any substance that starts to become a problem. You go out and have a couple of glasses of wine with a meal, you're not really going to come home and batter the missus, are you? But
not all drugs. I mean, like, I could give someone a kilo of weed and they wouldn't get more antisocial the more they smoked.
No, but there's a lot of cognitive disruption long term. Paranoia, anxiety, complete damage to the phenolphonine receptors so that your flight-or-fight response doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. But in terms of antisocial behaviour and cost to the
it's
government...
It's not so much antisocial, no, but there is a criminal element with weed as well in funding usage.
Yeah.
So there is evidence around chronic weed users turning to crime to get the money to buy the drug.
Yeah. I guess the one thing it doesn't make you is a good employee, good productive member of staff.
Again, it's level of usage, isn't it? You know, I mean, I know people that have a joint 2 or 3 times a week, and they're perfectly normal, productive members of society. And then I've even got family members that they got to a point where they couldn't hold the job down. It was problematic.
Really? Wow.
Because it became their sole coping mechanism for everything in life.
I think any substance, there's always extremes. And I think it takes people like yourself, Dave, to be as honest as what you have been. And I think I'm really fascinated. Like for the past hour and hour and 10, I've had more an education into steroids, drugs than I've ever had in any other capacity. I've always had this attitude, and I've always tried to live by it, though I haven't always managed it, is that if there's anything in my life, and this isn't just substances, this is materialistic things, if there's anything in my life that I cannot leave or stop without it being traumatic, then my relationship with that item is unhealthy. So if you turn around to me and said tomorrow you're not drinking coffee, and I love my coffee, you're not drinking coffee anymore, it's gone, your coffee's out your life, I'd be a bit uncomfortable. I generally would be a bit uncomfortable. I really enjoy coffee. So, my relationship with coffee isn't amazing, but it's not terrible. And it's the same with anything else. And I think if you can always have that attitude, that if you can walk away from a substance or a thing, mobile phones. How many people are addicted to the mobile phone?
So many.
And actually have a meltdown if you took it off them. Then you have an unhealthy relationship with that item, person, substance, whatever it may be. So I think I've always used that as a sort of benchmark. Can I walk away from this? Now, whether this is unusual or not, I don't know, but I'm a big one for... I analyse things. I analyse my behaviour in things retrospectively, and not in a weird way, but so they were notebook going, and I did this and I did that. What does that mean? But I will review situations. And go, did I handle that as best I could? How would I have done that better? Particularly if it's not the outcome I was expecting as well. But I do review things, and I'll also try and step back on a regular basis and look at myself. I think. The one thing I managed to do, it took a prison sentence to do it, but the one thing I managed to do was learn an attitude of honesty with myself. And it's something that I preach around steroid use and drug use, is honesty. I don't give a flying monkeys if you're taking a bucket load of drugs because your training's garbage and your diet's even worse. And you're using the drugs to compensate, as long as you are honest about that's why you're doing it. Because that's that start of that breakdown relationship. It's like TRT. You want to take more than TRT and call it TRT? That's fine, as long as you are honest that you realise what you're doing and you're honest about the fact that you are not taking TRT. You are doing more, even though you conveniently call it TRT, because then that means you have that set of checks and balances when it comes to health management, because you're going over the odds. And so that's always been my standpoint across the board, and I try and live my life by that. People don't like honesty. They struggle with it. They struggle. I mean, I don't look like a bodybuilder. I'm a fat old man is the bottom line. And I get that. I get people, because you put yourself out on social media for marketing and promotion and everything else. I'm like, but look at the state of you fat mess. Yeah, that's true. I am. You're not telling me any... I'm not offended by that. They're trying to have a face like, well, no, because it's the truth. How can you be offended by the truth?
That's the beauty of you. And again, coming back to the moment I came across you, you've been totally honest, and you're very clearly very self-aware as well. Like when you say that, like nothing can hurt me. You said that kind of before we even started that. We always ask every guest, is there anything we can't talk about? And you just said, I've told you that the world on social media for the last decade or so, everything about me, there's no skeletons in the closet.
No, really, no. There are subjects I won't touch because of the protection of others involved.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's the only to-do subjects I have are based when there is a third party that would be affected by the conversation. But me personally, I'm rat.
And that's why on topics like this, you're a trusted voice because people know you're not going to bullshit.
I think there's three things there. There's your knowledge, there's the maturity that you've shown, and just the complete lack of ego. I hope that's not offensive, but it's just...
No, I mean, I feel I have a unique balance and I have a unique insight in that. And I don't generally flex about the accreditations or the acknowledgements that I've received over the years, but I've got drug knowledge and mechanism knowledge. It's not the best. There are people out there that know more than me, and I can list them. Dr. Scott Stevenson is an absolute genius when it comes to anabolics and their effects in the body. So, and there's things I still get wrong and things that I still change my mind about. But I also have the lived experience, but I also have the fact that I'm entrenched in users, their opinions, their attitudes, their patterns of usage, their health issues, because pretty much all I do every day is look at blood work from users or talk to users about their problems that they're facing. So I think I get this really weird, unique standpoint. And it, for years, the academic side of things sort of shunned users. And they were sort of like, when I first started in the academic scene, I used to talk at the conferences, but the only reason they wanted me there was because I was big, I was a drug user, and I could actually string a sentence together. And I was happy to be quite open and honest about my usage. They didn't want me there for my knowledge. They didn't want me there for my experience. They wanted me there as a little bit of a, look, there's our pet druggie that can talk. And that was genuinely it. So I was always first on stage because that's where the crap speaker starts. And that was the end of it. And I made some bold statements. They were always very nervous about it because academics won't make any statement unless they've got years of verified data to back it up. I talked about addiction 10, 15 years ago. Oh, no, that doesn't happen. Oh, what are we talking about now? Oh, yeah, the last conference I did in Birmingham. Well, we want to talk about dependency. It's about a bloody time. It's only been happening for the last 15, 20 years. And it took a decade of being involved, speaking at conferences, and I sort of slowly moved up the ranks to become keynote speaker. So now people are wanting to hear my knowledge, but I still ruffle feathers because I don't fit that research model. Where's the data? I don't have it. What do you mean you don't have it? Well, I look at stuff all day, but I haven't bothered compiling it into any sort of format. I'm just telling you what I see. And they've always been really uncomfortable with that. But they're slowly starting to realise, and a lot of this was down to a guy called Joe Keane from Bradford. He used to run the Bradford Needle Exchange, then he was a manager for CJL, and then he worked for Bradford Uni. He now owns a blood testing company as well. In fact, he's got me on a panel on the 19th at the annual Needle Exchange conference. I think that's where it's called, in Birmingham. I don't know why it's always Birmingham. It always seems to be Birmingham.
Very central.
There's a lot of big gyms.
It's a crap hole, though.
There's a lot of big bodybuilding gyms in Birmingham.
Sorry for anyone from Birmingham, that just insulted.
We slagged off Barnsley last week.
In the same way,
that's fair.
I had the displeasure of being in Barnsley at about midnight the other week. What a bunch of creatures. There's things I didn't even know exist in human form over there. Weird people.
We basically spent a whole episode telling people how we turned Barnsley into a landfill site.
Yeah.
I think it already is. But and so I'm now involved with panels, and I now have a voice. And Joe's been really strong in pushing. Look, speak to the community. There's knowledge there. We're still talking about bloodborne viruses, which isn't really an issue for the average day steroid user, mainly because it gets some money. But the reality is we're focusing on an area that really isn't of concern, and there's other things that we should be looking at. And Jim McVeigh is retired now, unfortunately. Jim headed up the National Steroid Research Centre at John Moores University Hospital. Jim then got his Professor of Substance Misuse, and I believe he went to, it was either Manchester or Birmingham. But Jim was another guy that became very pro, let's engage the community, let's share knowledge. And it is slowly happening, but some of the stuff they come out with is like, mate, you're 10 years past here. This was stuff the community, we got a circular the other week about finasteride. It's like, gearheads have been using finasteride for decades because they don't want to lose their hair. And if you didn't know, steroids can make you lose your hair.
Well, that's how I took finasteride minoxidil from Manual. They were a big company. I could have got it, for a bit cheaper, but I thought it's great. They deliver it to your door. It's a subscription. And then once I'd done my finasteride stuff and I'd sorted my hair out a little bit, I then thought, I actually got emails then saying, have you ever had a blood test for like your testosterone levels? And I was like, no, but I've trained for 20 years, so I reckon I'm all right. And then they coach you on these emails. So I went through, had a little look, and they'll send you out a blood test.
And they do the blood test super cheap because they're not making any money on the back of them, because what they want to make the money on is a TRT.
Yeah. There
was one company, and I think it was Manual. So the range for testosterone in a male it depends on age slightly. So it's 6.9 to about 7.98, right, up to 25 to 29, depending on your age.
Okay.
Manual didn't change the range as such, but they put the cut-off point as 12. Okay. Now, the cut-off point for private TRT is generally around 12. So if you're sub 12, most TRT companies will pick you up no problem. There's a few that will pick you up higher if you're symptomatic. But there are other things that can cause those symptoms, and we are slowly becoming a species that just leans into drugs and chemicals for everything. And if you don't think that's true, there's 20 million Wegovy or Ozempic registered users in America alone.
20 million, yeah.
Wow. That doesn't include Mounjaro.
Wow. Well, Mounjaro's the big one over here, isn't it?
Reta's the big one, black market-wise.
Is it?
Retatrutide, which is, to be fair, the best of the three.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
But the only problem with Reta is it can cause depression as well.
Okay.
Though effectively like depression. It steals the joy out of life.
I was going to say, when you cut off eating, like that's
it's
a big
it affects dopamine responses. So there's actually a few people talked about this online as well, about the Reta's actually ending relationships.
Really?
Because people just aren't interested in the partners anymore because they just have no enthusiasm for stuff. They just don't care.
Well, when you're not eating as well, you're also suppressing
it's like a connection side of thing.
I've dieted down for holidays and been some pretty crazy levels of body fat, and when I'm kind of sub 10%, I look at my missus differently. I'm not looking at her like, oh, I'm ravenous here. I'm looking at like, it's the last thing on my mind. I can barely get it up. Do you know what I mean? Sub 10%.
Yeah, obviously dieting does have an effect on your hormones as well, because your hormones use fat for production. So women are particularly sensitive to this. So the amount of women that push themselves into a form of menopause because they stay lean.
Yeah. Yep.
Reta's been. I think the easiest way to describe it is it sucks the joy out of life. You just don't get a reward mechanism for things you do, and therefore you're less enthusiastic about doing anything.
Okay. It's obviously relatively new, the weight loss drug side of things. Yeah. Do you think this is going to be felt in years to come? Do you think there's more ramifications for this?
I think one of the biggest ramifications is addiction. Now, there is some thought that these GLPs only have an effective life of 2 years, and after 2 years of continuous use they become ineffective or less effective. The GLPs are really, really good. But the issue with them is that you also need to educate yourself about healthy diet and exercise. Now, I can give you a perfect example. Guy was 27 stone. He's now... No, I'm lying. I apologise. He was 23 stone and he's now 12. So he's lost 11 stone. But he's gone to the gym. He's got a personal trainer. He even paid for cooking lessons to learn to cook healthy and make healthy choices and learn how to plan the diet. That's your perfect example.
That's the way to do it.
He's used the drugs to get the motivation because he's seeing progress, but then he's also gone out to maintain it as he reduces the drugs. Now his blood work has gone from being Yeah, not really great to nigh on perfect. But also what's changed, he had a test level of 10. He's now got a test level of 21 from losing the fat and being healthy and active.
And training.
Yeah. So, but then another example, they're suffering from malnutrition because their diet was cakes, crisps, chocolate, toast, cheese. Went on GLPs, so now all they're eating is chocolate and crisps. So they're malnourished. They haven't changed their eating habits. They haven't changed their lifestyle. So as soon as they try and come off, they rebound, their appetite goes through the roof, they carry on eating crap, they put the weight back on. So they go back on the GLPs. What happens when the GLPs stop working?
All comes back.
Yeah, but where are they going to go? So they're going to move into another drug. So then you'll start seeing people, I personally feel you'll start seeing an increase in use in people outside of the general enhanced market. You'll see everyday people turning to things like T3, the thyroid medication, or clenbuterol. More aggressive fat loss drugs because they can't cope with gaining the weight back on, but the GLPs no longer work for them.
It's a fascinating take. I think I get that vibe from TRT as well. I think there's this term that is used in the drug world of like a gateway drug, and I wonder whether TRT is that for people to get into steroids again, like
potentially.
Maybe weight loss drugs, like you said, are that gateway to more clenbuterol and stuff like that,
and because they'll need an alternative.
Yeah,
we used to always, within the bodybuilding community, we always regard that T4 and T3, your thyroid's pretty robust. It didn't matter if you ran those drugs; it wasn't going to damage your thyroid. We now know that isn't the case, and we are seeing bodybuilders with thyroid issues because of T3 and T4 use. But yeah, I think the TRT definitely depends on the person. If someone's moving to TRT because they feel like crap, then generally they're probably going to have a fairly well relationship with the TRT because they just want to feel normal. The company that's providing it deals with everything, so they don't really get into it. But if someone's actively into their training and they go on TRT and they start to see increased progression, then you can as a species, if one is good, then four is fucking awesome. We've always thought that more is always better. More horsepower, bigger engines, bigger pint of beer, bigger this, bigger that, bigger waste packet, bigger house, bigger cars, bigger everything. Before you know it, you're driving a Dodge Ram at 5.7 litres. You leave my problem alone. I did say I had some poor relationships with items. So, if I take 120 milligram of test a week and it does this for me, what's going to happen if I take 300?
You mentioned your involvement in the bodybuilding world, the bodybuilding space. Is there any really common questions that you get from that community in particular? Because I'm cautious about the young guys, the young girls who are curious and maybe want to be prepared.
I think there's a couple of huge misunderstandings. I think people think steroids cause muscles to grow. Steroids do a lot of things, but if I took a gram of test now, I'm not going to grow muscle mass without stimulating the growth. The main component to muscle growth is the exercise. It's having effective training that stimulates muscle growth. That is the adaptive process that starts everything. If that is not correct, you will never get your full potential, no matter how many drugs you throw at it. And I think people, they do get frustrated with lack of progress, and they want to be a bodybuilder, or they want to compete, and they enter the drug world thinking it will fix all their problems. And it's like, yeah, to an extent, you're going to get a better response from the effort you put in if you're using drugs. But the problem is then you remove the drugs and that will then start to decline. So if you are a user within that sort of environment and you find that when you go on cycle, you progress, but when you come off cycle, you regress. And if you actually look back and go, well, actually after the last 2 years, I've not made any real progress. I've got big and strong when I've been on cycle and then I've come off and it's all gone again. The problem is your training. You're just not training effectively. So I think that is a common mistake that a lot of people anti-anabolics made. They look at it as a problem fixer without actually looking at where the problem is. And the problem 9 times out of 10 is training. Sometimes it's diet, but 9 times out of 10 is training. And I think when you are active in the fitness world, everybody talks about the importance of diet. And then everybody talks about drugs. How many people actively talk about training? Mm-hmm. And it's something even with pro athletes. Do they ever discuss the amount of sacrifice and effort's gone into their training to be the top of what they are? No, they're the bollocks. Because no one wants to talk about hard work because it's not fancy, it's not flashy, it's not glamorous. But that is the difference. You want to get big? You want to grow a lot of muscle? Learn how to train. And most people don't know how to do it.
There's a bigger push on that now, I think.
It's got a little bit better.
Like guys like Jeff Nippard are making it more popular to be into your training, the nuance of it and things like that. There's people like Dr. Mike Israel. There's been a little bit of controversy around him recently.
Yeah, we won't talk about it.
I'll leave that there.
You don't like him? Do you know?
As a person, I've no idea.
Okay.
Mike has got... And I think it's the drive, it's the financial drive for clicks, subscribers and views that has made him get a little bit less genuine and honest and a bit more sensationalistic and basically a little bit more full of shit. He just come out with some crap.
Yeah, okay.
Especially when he starts talking about drugs and what they do and stuff. There's a lot of assumptions and generalisations made. The reality is that progress requires hard work. It's not fashionable. It doesn't sell well. It's not glamorous. It's not going to get YouTube clicks. But that's the reality. But if you promise people the world through taking this, that, or doing this super complex protocol, that sells.
It's the pill. People want a pill. They want something they can take rather than the nitty-gritty.
The fact is, if you pulled your finger out your arse and just worked a bit harder, you would also succeed. And that goes across the board. I mean, there's your financial situation, your relationship situation. Bit more effort into it, you'll get more out of it.
Well, Mike talks a lot about steroids, and one of the things he always said was he reckons that the longevity of life massively decreases, and he uses the phrase like, "I'm not in this for a long time. I'm in this for a good time, and I'm making this decision." Is that a big factor when it comes to steroid use?
Yes,
longevity of life.
They age. They do age. You only got to look at heavy steroid users and see how old they look before the time. Everybody? No. I mean, Albert Beckles died this week, late last week. He was 95.
Who's this guy? Sorry?
Albert Beckles, ex-pro bodybuilder. He was always known as the oldest pro bodybuilder. He was 95, so it hasn't shortened his life expectancy, but there are plenty that have gone before. Yeah. And I do think a lot of it depends on how long you're in the game when you get out and how hard you push it when you are in the game. But not just from a drugs point of view, also from a physical size point of view. Yeah. Mass monsters don't live long.
There's been some big, high-profile deaths over the years. I mean, one of the biggest ones I can think of was probably Dallas Macabre.
Yeah, Dallas. I think Dallas was messing about with myostatin inhibitors, personally.
Okay.
Because his autopsy showed huge internal organal growth across the board. And the only thing that really does that is myostatin inhibitors.
The big controversy around that was when it first happened, they tried to cover it up and they tried to say he choked.
They tried to feel that he choked, and then there was some concern that it might have been insulin, and that he had had food in his throat, and he'd gone hypo and passed out due to the insulin, and that had caused him to choke. But then when they did the autopsy, now whether this was the cause of death, I'm not saying it was, but when they did the autopsy, his internal organ weight was massive, and it's like, that doesn't come from anabolics. It doesn't even come from growth. The only drug I know that does that is myostatin, or myostatin inhibitor. They are available. They're experimental. They're very expensive. Now, the issue with the current myostatin inhibitors that are actually, there's peptide ones full of statin and stuff, which is absolute garbage. True myostatin inhibitors are live biodrugs, so they're developed from harvesting mice spleens and creating antibodies. The problem is that currently they don't just switch off the mechanisms that control muscular growth. They switch off the mechanisms that control organal growth as well.
Organ growth?
Yes.
Okay. So to dumb it down for our audience, we have this thing called a myostatin.
There's a million different types.
So myostatin, and it basically stops us growing too much because our bodies will grow and grow and grow, and myostatin stops that. A myostatin inhibitor basically stops you growing too much in terms of your muscle mass.
But you have
because you get kids, don't you? Sometimes they've got natural myostatin deficiencies, and
so the big example is the bull
bodybuilders.
The Belgian blue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
And then they've done experiments with animals. Now the thing is, there is myostatin for organal growth. There's myostatin for muscle growth. There's myostatin for skin growth. There's all sorts. It's part of a regulatory system. So our body is full of checks and balances. So something will promote an element of what we do, and then something else will regulate that and slow it down. And through a series of sensors, our body regulates what happens. When you switch the regulator that says stop off, it carries on happening. Mm-hmm. So in this case, it's muscle growth, but they've not been able to isolate purely the myostatin that controls muscle. If they do, it'll be a £1 billion drug, because it'll cure all muscular dystrophy, muscle wastage disorders immediately.
What will happen to the bodybuilding world? Will it just mean that anyone can grow any amount of muscle?
Well, this is part of the argument around GLPs within bodybuilding at the moment. Does running a GLP for a comp prep sort of means you're no longer a bodybuilder because you're not suffering?
It's part of the. It was part of the process, right?
It was part of the process.
Yeah.
And as humans, we want convenience, we want ease of life, but the reality is, psychologically, we need trauma, we need effort, because we need to perceive reward. And though we might perceive reward because we stand up, let's say you could take a tablet that made you shredded. Right, take this tablet, I'm shredded. Stand on stage, I win the show. There'll be an immediate gratification because I got a trophy, I got loads of pictures, I got loads of comments, but that will soon dissipate to the reality that I didn't earn this. There's no satisfaction through the work because there was no work. Mm-hmm. And actually, psychologically, we reward ourselves if we put effort into something that is then successful, much more than if we're successful with no effort. So the process, the journey, the work element of it is actually crucial to happiness. And when you look at longevity societies like cultures in Japan and some of the villages and stuff there.
The blue zones, they call them, don't they?
Yeah. They're still working. They're 96-year-old and they're still working. But they're working for the community. So they'll look after a common space. They might do gardening. They might do cooking or baking. They might do building repairs, whatever it will be. But they get up every morning. And the other thing you notice with all of them is they all tend their own gardens. They all grow food. And they all are productive in creating something that has a substance afterwards, has a value, has a tactility to it. And that's one of the reasons why they mark down to them being so healthy and aging so long, because they keep themselves productive.
They're moving.
We as a human being need to be productive.
Amazing.
But yeah, the other thing you're on about bodybuilding stuff, it's more the bodybuilding stroke TRT range, where another big question and a big mistake a lot of people make is a mil a week is not TRT. And also, if you are talking about your drugs in milliliters, then you don't know what you're doing. Because millimeters is a measurement of volume, not of drug strength. Drugs are dosed in milligrams, which is a weight. If I take 1 mil a test 200, that's 200 milligrams per mil, I'm taking 200 milligrams. If I take 1 mil a test 400, that's 400 milligrams per mil, and I'm taking 400 milligrams. It's double the dose. So, don't talk about your drug dosages in milliliters. Learn about milligrams and talk about your drug doses in milligrams. TRT is TRT. You can do more, but don't label it as something else, because that will create familiarity. It will put ideas into your head that it's TRT, it's safe, there's no risk, I don't need to monitor my health. That is not bloody true. Even with TRT, you're supposed to test your bloods every 3 months. They don't always do it, but you're supposed to. And then, I think the other thing is this thinking that drugs fix all the problems.
Okay. I've got a bit of a question, which one of them is looking back, one of them is looking forward. I suppose going backwards for you, Is there any maybe regretful decisions where you wouldn't change a thing?
No.
Cool, that's that one.
No. So that might sound stupid after I listed my health problems. I would love to be fit and healthy, but my journey brought me to me. And I quite like me. And I quite like where I am in life. There's always things you want to change, but then if there wasn't hardship and challenge, you wouldn't get the reward from overcoming it. So what's the point of living?
And you had that burning desire to do things, and if you hadn't done them, and you hadn't pushed to be
I'd still be thinking, what if?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm just about to embark on a ridiculous project, nothing to do with physique. I've bought a property in France and I'm going to open a cafe.
Wow, are you going to move out there?
I don't know. We'll see. I'm absolutely bloody terrified. I'm going to Scooby-Doo what I'm doing. I've got no money to do it with because I spent everything on buying the property in the first place.
You're going to appear on that show. What's it called? French Renovations or something like that.
Yeah, new life in the sun.
Yeah.
But it's like, life's too short to not have experiences. Life's too short to not experiment and challenge yourself and try and do things. And my partner, my wife, is very much on board with it. I mean, I wouldn't do it if she wasn't. But, you know, it's like, I don't want to be safe and just go to work and come home. And I mean, I'm in a position with work and stuff where I could sit back, relax, and just, you know, earn a wage and put some money in the bank. But what's the fun in that?
And that was my second question about that burning desire, that desire to suffer and struggle. And it sounds like
it's
speaking
balanced.
French.
It's less extreme.
Okay.
It has balanced. I mean, there was definitely periods of time for that project where I lost my way, without doubt, and I disappeared down various rabbit holes. So I do feel I'm more balanced for going through that process. Not necessarily did it need to be what I did, it could have been something else, but I think going through the process of pushing myself to my actual, literally my physical limits and the mental fortitude and everything else that came with that, excuse me, and also a huge amount of pain for various problems that weren't along the way, injury-wise. I believe that has balanced it a little bit more. So my drive isn't as extreme. It's more balanced.
I think that's my favourite timestamp I've ever written, by the way, French cafe.
But yeah, I mean, I've still got plans. They're not particularly within the bodybuilding community space, but I've still got plans, and I still want to try things and do things. And
it's in your nature. You know, you want to.
I say life's about living.
I agree too.
And I think, I mean, I went through this. I focused on what the bank balance was. I focused on what car I drive. I mean, the car I drive now is a car I drive for choice, not a car I drive to try and impress anybody else. But I have had cars I've purchased more because I wanted other people's opinion to change.
I need to know what car that is now. What cars have you had?
Bentley GT.
Wow.
And, you know, that was beautiful, stunning, amazing car. But a large portion of that was to impress other people.
Outward perception.
Yeah. And it's like, why? And so I stepped away from that, but I've been down that road of you know, wanting the big bank balance, wanting the big house, wanting the flash car and everything else. And now I couldn't give a toss what people think.
Maturity, that isn't it?
It's what makes me smile. What I get out, open the window in the morning, look out and go, I love my truck, I love my truck. And yeah, I don't really, and I don't put materialistic things online. I don't post on my social media about various things. I'll talk about it, like I talk about the truck in the podcast and stuff like that, but I don't, it's not something that I'm bothered about promoting because it's not important to me anymore.
Yeah. I'm conscious there's a lot of people, a lot of blokes who listen to this, and they'll have this idea that maybe I should go on TRT. Maybe it is something that I want to explore the route of. You've got a guy who's 35 or above. He's been thinking about TRT. He thinks he might have low test levels based on some of the symptoms. What is the best route for him to go down?
Well, first thing is a blood test.
Blood test?
Yeah. First thing is a blood test.
Two blood tests?
2 blood tests. Do one and then do another one a week, 2 weeks later. Make sure that your low level is sustained. Because if you've had alcohol within 24, 36 hours to the test, prior to the test, your test levels are going to be low. So you want to be at least a week free of alcohol, ideally. And if it comes back as a low level, then fine. You can go down the route of TRT. I mean, to be fair, you can go down the route of TRT if you want anyway. It's your choice, but you would. So the pros and cons are very simple. This going on TRT is signing up for drug use for life.
For life.
For life.
So once you're on TRT, you pretty much nailed it.
Once you start TRT, within 12 months, particularly if you have a low functioning level already, your natural function probably will not work anymore.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Because when you suppress the signal hormones of LH and FSH from the pituitary gland, you no longer stimulate the Leydig cells, which are the cells in the testes that make testosterone, and as a result, they atrophy and waste away. Some people can recover more commonly, particularly if you're starting from a low level anyway. They're not going to do. It's not a miracle. So bear in mind in the context that this will improve your hormone levels. It's not going to fix every problem you've got. Yes, you might find you're getting a little bit more muscle mass, but not a huge amount, and you might manage body fat levels a little bit better, i.e. you might get a slightly better result for your dieting efforts and everything else, but it isn't going to transform you. So that's the first thing. If you decide to do it off your own back, you are buying an unregulated drug. There is no guarantee it is the quality or dosing it should be, and you cannot travel with that drug in several countries. Prescription is basically a legal license to possess the drugs named upon the prescription. So you've got to bear that in mind as well. So if you're not going to go non-script, there may be issues like, say, you decide to go to America for 2-3 weeks. You ain't taking your drugs with you.
And that means you'll crash, you'll feel shit.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah, and you won't enjoy your experience.
Yeah. It does require management. So you are or should be blood testing every 3 months. The areas you need to watch are lipids, because using testosterone will lower your HDL. Now, there's a lot of argument about lipids, but one thing we can say for certain is that LDL puts cholesterol in the bloodstream to be used by the body, and HDL takes it out. Not enough HDL, you don't get cholesterol out of your bloodstream, you end up with high levels of circulating fat, and then you can start starving the heart and the body of oxygen. Not in the sense of oxygen to your lungs, in the sense of oxygen to the organs. Blood will thicken. So you'll get an elevated hemoglobin. Oh yeah, and why we're here. HCT is a marker towards blood thickening, so hemocrat, but it is not the one you want to be working on. The one you want to be working on is hemoglobin, because hematocrit will also elevate with dehydration, whereas hemoglobin will not so much. Hemoglobin is the actual material in your bloodstream, whereas hematocrit is a measurement of how much blood in a given volume there is. So work off hemoglobin, but blood thickening, that's something you need to manage. It may require you to have a blood let periodically, maybe every 3 months, maybe every 6 months. And prostate enlargement is something you need to keep an eye on as well.
Great
and
answer.
you also need to be respective that this is medicine. In the same way, if you've got a headache, you'd take 2 paracetamol, you wouldn't take 10. You need to have the same approach to your TRT. It's very easy to get flippant and start to think, oh, I'll just push it up a bit, I'll just push it up a bit. The amount of people that come to me, I'm on 200 mega tests, 220, 225 mega tests a week, I feel like crap. Okay. Pull it back. Oh, I don't want to do that. Honestly, pull it back. Come back 3 weeks later. Put me, I feel brand new now. Yeah, you're just running too high. Drugs create stress. Long-term exposure to stress will decline how you feel.
Are you saying then also the same way when like big pro bodybuilders or just anyone in the bodybuilding world will cycle drugs, they'll ramp them up and then bring them down again? Do you do the same with TRT?
No, TRT is TRT. It's a medicine. It's a fixed dose that require that. What you're looking at with TRT is a dose that puts your test levels, I would argue, somewhere between 20 and 25 ml. Doesn't matter what that dose is, as long as that's where it's put in your test levels.
And what's that equivalent to in terms of age ranges? Because people talk about TRT.
That would be the test levels of a healthy 20-year-old. And then if you choose that you want to take more drugs, that's fine. That's your choice. Do it in a cyclitic format. So you have a set period of time where you run higher doses. And then you come off. You allow your levels to drop before you restart your TRT. What you do not do is come off your cycle and go straight onto TRT. Let's ballpark figures. Your test is at 100 ml on your cycle. You come off, it starts to decline. So let's say it drops by 20 mmol a week. So it goes from 100 to 80, then you put your TRT dose and it's back up to 90. Drops to 70, put your TRT dose and it's back up to 80. Drops to 60, put your TRT dose back up to 70. So what you end up doing is prolonging the period your hormones are elevated for. Now, if you're doing a cyclitic format where you're 12 weeks on cycle, then you're taking 12 weeks off on TRT, you'll find that actually, out of those 12 weeks on TRT, you've probably only been in natural ranges for 2 weeks. So stop your cycle, let your levels come down. Depending on your dose, generally 2 weeks is enough. Some it might be 3 weeks. Then start your TRT. That way, when you're on TRT, you are back in normal ranges and you're giving the body a rest. This going straight on TRT after cycle and then going back another cycle is why people end up with really big problems with blood thickening, because they've never actually been off. They've not let the levels come down. So actually, they're permanently on cycle. They just don't realise it.
How many actors in big movies are on steroids? This is the big, again, taboo subject in that industry.
Well, we know Sly was because he's admitted it. We know Schwarzenegger was because he's admitted it.
Current actors, I'm talking
Batista would have been because of his previous careers. So there's no doubt, but I'm pretty confident Batista has been. I could actually find out if he is now because I know his trainer.
Oh, do you? Okay.
I'm not going to put him in that position. Again, I think The Rock probably has been. Maybe not so much now because he's slimmed right down, but I think he probably will have been, yes.
I'm surprised you said probably. If I had to put my house on the fact he's been on stuff.
I like to give people the benefit of the doubt.
I do, but The Rock, no.
I don't like to accuse people. I don't like to accuse people of using drugs without having concrete evidence. So I'll always caveat it.
Okay.
I think they would be, but I can't say for certain. Who else? You know what? It wouldn't surprise me if Jason Statham's dabbled. Maybe low end, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's dabbled.
There was obviously a big controversy around Wolverine. What's he called?
Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman.
Yeah,
he got pretty jacked up.
The only one I'm a bit reluctant on would be Henry Cavill.
You think he's naturally?
I think he potentially could be, just because of his nature.
He could be because of his nature.
He could be natural because of his nature.
Oh, natural because of his nature. Okay.
Because he's quite meticulous. He's quite detail driven. It's like he left The Witcher because they weren't staying true to the books.
Yeah.
You know, the new 4K thing he's doing, you know the one I mean?
I think so. I'm trying to think what it's called.
Yeah.
World of War.
No, Warhammer? The Space Marine one.
Warhammer?
Warhammer 4K.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Ultramarines and all that stuff. He's so anal about it's true to what the game is and everything else. So I can see him potentially actually being quite against enhancing himself.
I can see him being more like, if there's training to be done, I've got to work hard for it. That's what I'll do.
Yeah, I can see him being very meticulous and very exacting in his training and his diet and everything he does. So I can see him being natural, to be fair.
Yeah.
Shia LaBeouf, I think he probably has. Or whatever his name is. He went a bit nuts, didn't he, recently?
He did.
But he also
Not recently, I think he's been nuts for a while.
Yeah, but he also transformed his physique as well. So I can see him definitely have been.
Yeah.
I don't know enough movie stars really to be able to comment on anymore. To be honest, I'm struggling now.
I'm struggling, yeah. But there was a fascinating thing that came out a while ago. It was quite a viral video, and it was a coach talking about how a lot of these guys who get in shape for like an Ibiza holiday, and all their mates will do like one cycle. And some people's bodies, as you've mentioned, are very adapted to this stuff and will be quite tolerant of it. You get other people who will do one cycle of a steroid thing to get in shape for a holiday in Ibiza, and for literally the next decade, it will mess up their hormone levels. They'll struggle to recover. They'll never quite be the same energy-wise, confidence-wise, mental-wise. Is that true? Can people do one cycle and it messes them up for?
Yeah, you can do one cycle and not be able to recover. There are psychological impacts. These drugs do pass the blood-brain barrier, so there is neural impact. It can trigger things like, I know people that have used Tren, and it's a popular drug for the Ibiza crowd. Getting lean, and it's all like test and Tren. Everyone goes and test and Tren if they're going to Ibiza. And it can be the straw that breaks a camel's back when it comes to things like anxiety and paranoia, and that can remain post-usage without doubt. Tren is shown to damage brain cells. Now, there was, it went around for a while that it caused Alzheimer's. That wasn't what the study said. The study said that it can impact brain cells on a level of Alzheimer's. If you want to look at steroids in the brain, look at the stuff coming out of Oslo University. Astrid, I'm sure it's Astrid. I either call her Ingrid or Astrid, and I'm sure it's Astrid. She's done a lot of research on anabolic action within the brain.
Wow.
Increased cellular death within the brain through anabolic action and stuff like that. Malformation of the amygdala, all these sort of things go on in the brain. So, yeah, it is possible. You could argue that this would be the same individual that would have problems if they took alcohol and other things as well. I mean,
so you think it's more of like a personal thing, genetically?
Yeah, you have,
or is it someone just maybe taking too much for
it can
a
be
short
a bit of both. It can be a bit of both. It could be there's underlying issues that they've never really fully come to terms with, and this is the straw that breaks a camel's back. They took too much, they've been on too long, or it's a cross-polymer drug use that's had a total effect, so that they're already using recreational drugs and other compounds, and it's all together. There's all sorts of genetics around growing muscle and staying lean, and obviously there's those for the actual growing muscle, and there's those for the response to protein and diet and being able to lose fat easily, but there's also those for the point of view of having the stomach to train intensely. There's those from responding to the drugs very, very quickly, or being able to tolerate the drugs at high levels, which was me. I didn't get side effects while I was on the drugs. Not particularly.
Do you have to take stuff now?
I take TRT.
Do you have to take? Do you have to take that now because you've been on it for so long?
Yeah, I won't produce natural testosterone, but I mean, my TRT is 80 milligrams a week. But I remember most weeks I forget and only do 40 milligrams.
Okay.
Which reminds me, I'm due shot today actually.
Don't do it here.
Do I notice it? No.
Do you don't notice it?
But then there's other factors with me as well, with the kidneys being where they are and the heart being where they are. So fatigue is a common bedfellow for me.
Talk to me about this known term, roid rage. Is this a real thing? Is it more personality driven? Is it drug driven?
It's a bit of both. Is someone using anabolics suddenly turn a mild-mannered janitor named Henry, called Hong Kong Philly, into that was a joke for the oldies, into a raving lunatic? No, not in the slightest. So the media roid rage doesn't exist. Are people more aggressive when on anabolic steroids? Yes.
Why is that?
It's to do with neural stimulation within the brain. It also affects the amygdala, which is our emotional control center. Now, there's different levels of aggression, and there's things that can be misconstrued as aggression as well. So on anabolics, you feel stronger, you feel more confident, you therefore are more outspoken. That can come across as aggression to somebody if they're not used to you standing up for yourself. But there are people that are genuinely aggressive. Trenbolone, this comes up a lot because it is very neurally impacting. Trenbolone, loads of, probably 50% of the research that I've done with Trenbolone users will admit to an aggressive episode that's out of character. Oh. A lot of this involves road rage and stuff like that, and some of it's quite extreme. So yes, aggressive episodes can occur. Aggression is definitely a factor. The individual, their mental makeup, other life pressures all play into this, and it is very much a sliding scale. I never really got aggressive, but I was definitely more outspoken and more confident, but I didn't. If anything, I was probably more likely to move to violence prior to using anabolics because of insecurities and fear and lack of confidence.
Having to prove yourself.
Whereas post-anabolics, I had so much confidence, I had nothing to prove. So it can vary from person to person. If someone assaulted someone and then went to court and claimed diminished responsibility because they were using a cycle of anabolics, that could be proven medically.
Really? So someone could cause harm on steroids, go to court if they proved that it was a side effect and it was an issue.
It's a side effect, so they could argue. I mean, obviously, it's difficult to prove it affected that person in that way.
And they could get a reduced sentence because
possibly,
of that.
I don't know. It'd be down to the judge at the end of the day. But there is argument, and it would stack scientifically that because someone's using anabolics, there is an argument that they could have diminished responsibility for their actions because the drug. Now, I don't believe in it personally, because I think, well, you took the drugs, you're responsible for the effects of those drugs, irrespective. So if your behaviour becomes abhorrent because of the drugs, well, that's your fault. So you shouldn't be, but
you should know the side effects when you're taking them. Right?
But in the eyes of the law, there is room there for some manoeuvrability potentially. Okay. Never seen it happen. Never seen anyone claim it. So I don't know how it would actually turn out. But it was a conversation I had with a chief inspector from Hull many years ago, because they were talking about an individual that they used to get in and regularly in the cells, and sometimes it'd be really violent and struggle with him, and other times it'd become placid. But he was also a known steroid user, and they said, could that be having any effect? And I said, yes, definitely.
Interesting. Wow.
Just very conscious of Dave's time. He's been absolutely brilliant so far.
Absolutely. I think you've answered pretty much everything on my list. There's always something I forget once you've left, but mate, thank you so much for answering so candidly, and you were definitely the voice we needed for this episode.
Pleasure.
I think people are really going to take a lot home from it.
I hope people enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in terms of if anyone wants to check out the work you're doing or what he wants to inquire with.
Oh God, I'm rubbish at this stuff. Blood testing, the company's eval blood analysis, obviously www.com on the end.
Yep. And if someone's thinking about TRT, that's the route to go down.
Blood testing first, always blood testing first, yeah. I do private management and consult from a point of view of people doing this self-administration. So best way to reach out for me from that is just through social media platforms.
Fantastic. I'll make sure to add it into
I don't have a website for myself. I did have it, shut it down. I couldn't be bothered.
Yeah. I mean, social media is so prolific now, isn't it? That you
I'm not good with all this stuff. I really am.
You say that though, but I've seen your videos, mate.
Yeah, but that's not me. That's somebody I pay. That's the point.
We haven't got that luxury.
I get a list occasionally of, right, do this video, do that video, do this video. Okay.
Well, what we'll do is if you want, we will happily send you over all this stuff, the videos. You can snip it up bits, and we'll obviously do that for our social media.
I'm sure she'll appreciate it, yeah, because she's always at me for content. Always at me for content.
There's loads in this. Dave, mate, thank you so much for today. Awesome.
Thank you, Dave.
It's been a pleasure meeting you,
honestly, and to you. Thank you so much.
Guys, thank you for joining us again before I go though.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, thank you for joining us on the Fit Dads podcast. We'll see you next one.
See you soon.
My man,
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, what an episode.